Welcome, everyone, to the Workforce Navigator podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. Today, we've got a super interesting conversation and one that maybe you wouldn't even expect we're going to be really glad to listen into. We have today on Jason Loomis. Now, Jason, you are the Chief Information Security Officer at Freshworks, a very big international company. But we're going to talk about today is why culture eats strategy for breakfast. And specifically, when you and I first started talking, you lit up and you said, "Hey, Steve, when I come into a new position, the number one thing that I do is I assess the culture of the team." And I just thought, from a CISO perspective, I would never expected to hear that. A lot of companies, culture, company values, those are things that are on a website page somewhere. They used to be hung on a wall somewhere, right? But did it have applicability and a role in the business? So what I'd love to do is just first and foremost turn it over to you and explain a little bit more about what you're thinking.
Yeah, sure. When you jump from cybersecurity over to culture, I don't think that's what people expect. Like, why do you have a guy in cybersecurity on the show talking about culture? Because cybersecurity is expected, it's heavy tech, all just numbers and acronyms and data and a bunch of smart nerds. And in my opinion, it couldn't be further from the truth. So there's three things we focus on in cyber. It's people, process, and technology. And if you don't have the people, process and technology goes right out the door. So it starts with people first. So I'm a people first CISO. In fact, I don't really look at myself as cybersecurity just as something that I happen to do that helps me be a great leader, or like I get the benefit. To me, it's like it's crack for me is being a leader and being able to help people be the best version of themselves is one of the biggest drivers of why I do what I do.
Let's start out from a certain perspective on this. Like, if you didn't have this people first mentality and literally building a culture within your team, what would happen? Like, tell me the downsides of if you were one of the many leaders for their teams that didn't even really think that much about culture. We just kind of came in and started doing, right? Why is it important?
Yeah, I would probably be like, and I'm probably going to get rocks thrown at me at my next conference, I'd probably be like 75% of the CISOs out there. And it's not necessarily the CISO's fault. I think the most companies, when they hear technology, that's what they focus on. For example, when you're hiring someone in cybersecurity, or a typical CISO will hire someone, you got a resume and you look for skill sets. Okay, do they have this technology? Have they worked with this technology? Do they know this acronym? Do they know this compliance framework? Okay, great hire. He's got all the matches. She's got all the matches. Let's hire her. Great fit. No, it's not how I hire. I hire for talent and skill set. So do they have the talent and the ability to learn it? Not necessarily do they just match this. Can they learn it is what my biggest thing is the biggest thing that I look for is, do you have the want? Like, do you want to learn it? Are you excited about this? Do you wake up in the morning and go, I want to learn new things? And then do you have the ability to, not necessarily just the checklist for technology? So I think there's always been a disconnect in tech in general, and cybersecurity especially, is that you go down this little checklist of technology and that's what makes a good team. And it's not. Like, you'll probably get by in the short term, but you'll struggle with things like turnover. You'll struggle with things like getting the team on board with a specific vision or direction. Very hard to get in what's called reactionary versus proactive security. When you're reactionary, the reward system is a little different. Like, for example, a lot of people will reward what's called pen testing. It's like finding bad things in code, which is a job of security. We'll reward that. But that doesn't get you very far. It's like fixing the car after it came off the production line. Oh, we had a defect. We got to go fix it. It's going to cost a lot more to do it there. And it's very reactionary versus going down the manufacturing line and finding what caused the defect to fix it there. That's sort of this mentality of reactive versus proactive. So I think there's a lot of downsides to not looking at people in security. People first.
This is like 20-year-old information, so I don't know if they look at it this way anymore. But Nike used to look and they would hire for what they called the right corporate athlete. And I was thinking about that as you were talking at the beginning there, because you weren't talking about somebody that necessarily had the very specific exact tech skills, but they had the qualifications to succeed. They wanted to succeed. They were the right corporate athlete, team athlete for your team. Did I get that read right? Is that a good way to think about it?
Yeah, I'm a big Nike fan, by the way. I went to University of Oregon too, so I've got a little homeliness there with them. Yeah, absolutely. I hire for fit. Do they fit the team? Do they fit what I'm trying to build with the culture of my team? Is that the fit? And then everything else is ancillary. Because most likely, if I'm looking for either it's a deputy CISO position or I'm looking for a SOC 1 analyst, My biggest thing isn't what experience, what technology have you worked with, or what frameworks, or what size company, what vertical of company have you worked with, which is the failure of most leadership I see, is where they go, I need to find someone who's worked in SaaS, who's worked in ITSM, which is one of our verticals, and they look for this because they think that's what they need to be successful. And absolutely, to me, it's further from the truth. You should start with, how are they going to fit into the culture that we want to build here? How well are they taking care of their people? Are they a people first mindset? And process and technology second. That's what I look for.
I want to define what your perspective of team culture is. Like defining and shaping this team culture. What are you looking to accomplish? What kind of a culture are you trying to create?
I was thinking about this the other day, even just defining culture. How do you define what is culture? It's things like values and mission, work environment, leadership style, communication style, the social dynamics and teamwork, how you recognize and rewarding your people, what's the adaptability of the team, what's your employee well-being. So many things go into it. So how do I define my culture? I think I've summed it up in one sentence. How my teams make decisions is more important than the decisions themselves. And that's really the theme that I go by, is how we're coming to our team decision-making process. And believe it or not, it sounds simple. That's it, just making decisions. Well, yeah, because everything you're doing is really a decision. And if you're making it in a silo, or you're doing a top-down leadership method without getting buy-in from your team, do they trust you? Do they have the ability to be vulnerable? The idea of a devil's advocate. There's a famous quote from the old CEO of Avis who said, if I have a yes man working for me, one of us is redundant. Are you having somebody disagree with you to get to good decision making, to make the best decisions for the team and for the organization? So I'd say that's the culture I look for. And I try to build a culture around that.
So let me dig a little bit deeper, because in our previous conversation, you threw out a couple of different terms. One of them was psychological safety. Another one was, I want them to know I've got their back. What were you meaning when you said those things?
Yeah, those trust build this idea of, do you have trust on your team? Does your team trust you as a leader? Do the team trust each other? It's also a great book that I'm going to throw out there. If you haven't read it and you're listening to this podcast, go out now and read it. It's called Five Dysfunctions of a Team. It's an easy read. It'll take you maybe 5-6 hours. It's a story too. It's not like a manual that you got to take notes on, but it's just a story. And it starts, it says, at the foundation of every high functioning team is the idea of trust. And trust comes through things like showing vulnerability, is how you build trust. Does your team trust you? Do they have the ability to speak up and speak their mind? And that is psychological safety. Like, can I disagree with my boss? You got to feel psychologically safe to do that. Can I disagree with my team member? Can I say, hey, I'm not sure if that's the right idea here. Maybe this is the solution we should try. That's psychological safety, and you have to build that. I say it's the responsibility of the leader, but the team also can help foster that as well.
So obviously there has to be a balance, right? You're the ultimate decision maker in your team, right?
I have been quoted as saying that, is like, hey, we're gonna come together and make some decisions here as a team. Ultimately, I'm the coach and I got to call the play. I get it, but probably 98% of the decisions in the last 2.5 years have never been me alone, or I've been able to convince through my experience. So I have the years of experience. I'm hired for a reason. I have 20 years of experience in tech. Some of my team members only have 5. I've been there, done that. So I have a lot of experience to bring, but it's still part of the conversation that through debate and through discussion, I hope to change their mind if I believe that I'm really right about something. And the majority of the time, I've actually hard pressed to think of a time that I've blatantly disagreed with my team where they've said, no, the team as a whole has said, no, this is what we need to do. And I've said, okay, I'm going to do something different. We've always had consensus. So now that's not agreement. That's another topic in leadership, right? Is that you're never going to have a room full of people typically that are going to all agree. And if they do agree, that's bad. That's where you want to talk about devil's advocacy and this idea of you got to have some differing of opinion, but you can disagree. But do you have consensus? Okay, you have your opinion. The majority of us say this. We've come together. We think this is the right direction on a whole. Great. Or we all bought into this decision, even though some of you individually may disagree with it. Let's go the direction that we agreed on. And that's having consensus. And that happens a lot in decision making, and to make good decisions, because then you're also getting the buy-in for the people. Is that the worst thing is to have decisions made without your say. Like, why was this chosen? I didn't even get a vote. I didn't even get you never even heard what I had to say or my opinion. That's another part of team dynamics. It's very important.
The idea of team dynamics here, what is in your mind, the most important outcome from creating this kind of a culture, this kind of team dynamics?
I'm going to loop back to the decision making. The outcome is good decision making, is that you're making good decisions. But believe it or not, that is what's going to build the culture to get there. You got to have the good culture to get to the good decision making as a team. And that culture is trust. And then 5 dysfunctions of a team is conflict. First, you have to have trust, which is that I have your back as a leader. I can talk to, if you ask me about how do you go about tactically doing that as a leader, I'd love to talk about that. After you have trust, the second thing is the conflict. You have to have good cognitive, meaning not affective conflict. Affective is where you're disagreeing with the person's like, I don't like your hair today, Steve. That's really bad hair. That's affective conflict. Cognitive conflict is talking about the idea or the argument itself. So good cognitive conflict takes that trust to be able to have good cognitive conflict in the team to make good decisions.
Well, personally, at my age, I'm glad to have the hair that I do. So I just wanted to say that. But you stopped yourself, but you said, I'd really like to talk about how leaders create trust. So I would love to hear your point of view from the leader of the team, how you create that trust.
Sure. Let me start with how it's not done. It's not done in one offsite with a bunch of trust falls. And it's not done in an offsite where you go do a 5 dysfunctions workshop, take 2 or 3 hours. Yay. Okay. We all trust each other. Good job. Or you share something open about your past at this exercise, which they do a lot. You'll see it offsite, or you go at this leadership offsite and share something people don't know about you. Okay, great. We trust each other. That does not happen. Look at it like, I really heard this great talk. Simon Sinek gave a good analogy that it's like going to the gym. You don't go to the gym once and you're in shape. You don't go to the gym twice and you're in shape. You don't go to the gym for a month and you're in shape. But slowly over time, through practice and behavior, you get in shape. Leadership is the same thing. It takes time, practice, effort over a long period to be able to be successful at it. So one of the things you can't look at it like is that it's just an overnight switch. So some of the ways is being vulnerable to your team. And the way to do that is admitting failures. And there's an exercise that I do. Here's a tactical way to do it. I have biweekly meetings with my leadership team. And once a month, we do what's called an Oops, I Did It Again, closet Britney Spears fan. It's called Oops, I Did It Again exercise, where it's, hey, everybody, we're going to go around the table and say something you effed up in the last month, a mistake that you made, preferably business. If not, hey, go to your personal life and something that you screwed up, because it shows that everybody makes mistakes. And you want to normalize failure, because fear, the absence of trust often, that fear, the fear of failure, the fear of, oh, I can't screw anything up here and I'm afraid to speak my mind. You build that trust by removing the fear of failure and normalizing failure. That, hey, Stephen, I expect you to fail. Nobody's perfect. I failed. Look what I've done. God, last week I just said the F word during an audit committee meeting. Holy crap, that was bad. And there I shared that I'm vulnerable. I make mistakes. I expect you're going to make mistakes too. And it's okay if we do. It's how we pick ourselves back up and learn from it. That's what's important. That's an aspect of building that trust and something tactically that I do to do that.
This idea of normalizing failure is a way of saying failure is a vastly important part of a team culture.
Yes.
Promoting failure, right? Now that seems about the opposite end of the spectrum of intuitive, right? But I remember in the mid days, not early days of Microsoft, like Bill Gates would be saying things like, I only hire people that have failed big before, right? Because you learn so much, right? Is this something that is appreciated, right? Tell me about if I were talking to your team right now and they were saying like, yeah, it's okay to fail. Like, how are they thinking about it? Is it something that sets them off on reckless abandon because they have permission to fail? Or how are they thinking about it?
No, we're still measured by the same goals, the goals of being successful and hitting our targets and hitting our deadlines and stuff, but that you're going to have failures along the way, along the process, that we understand that's normal. So a good analogy I hit earlier was about the idea of an auto manufacturing line and how you fix the car at the end. But a lot of software development is based on Toyota manufacturing methods from the 50s. And one of the things that they developed is called the Toyota Kata method of manufacturing. Was they had this idea that it's called, over every work center along the manufacturing floor plan of a Toyota car manufacturer, there's this cord that anyone can pull. Any single person along that line, if they see a defect, they pull this cord, and guess what that cord does? It stops the entire line. It means the entire factory shuts down for one person. Imagine that much power in a single line contributor, individual employee, to say, you know what? This is important enough that we stop everything to catch the fault, to fix the error. And that person's not chastised. What'd you do? You just stopped everything. We're losing millions of dollars. No, thank you for pulling that. Thank you for finding the fault. Thank you for calling that out. And this is what we're going to do to fix it. Same thing is the reason why Boeing has had problems recently. If you heard about that, they said they changed from a culture of transparency and honesty and open and being able to call out failures. And I see this or I see this, whistleblowing. Hey, we think we might have a process here. If you read about their culture recently and the changes over the last 5 to 10 years with the safety problems, it's because their culture changed. They became a culture of numbers and financial metrics, not safety, to reward calling out when failures are made or mistakes are made.
That's a great story to talk about the impact of culture. I grew up as a kid in Seattle, Washington. Boeing was like, that was the brand. It employed the most people. It was right. It was honored. It was respected. I mean, they started in the early 1900s, right? What a fabulous brand that went into the toilet, literally went into the toilet, right? Based on the impact of the culture. Right. I think you've just accentuated in a very dramatic way how important culture is for a business, right? That's the negative part. But tell me a little bit, you mentioned it earlier. How does culture impact your ability to attract the right talent, maintain the right talent, reduce churn, keep the best of the best wanting to work with you? So ultimately, you feel like I have the highest performing team, right? I've done a good job putting this together. How does culture play into that ecosystem?
It has to start with where is sometimes going to be a losing battle with some companies. You got to start with what are called the hygiene factors are salary based pay, or at least the range, your salary, your benefits, your healthcare, childcare, transportation costs. With those being equal, so your company has to compete at least so that the hygiene factors are equal. If you're underpaying by 20% of the market, you could be the best leader in the world and you're just not going to be able to retain talent. That's a fact. You got to be at least at market. So let's say everything being equal and your hygiene factors are there. Everything else for retention, I absolutely believe in the statement about people don't leave companies, they leave their managers. Absolutely. And so it's up to the manager for the retention. And the ways that you do that is by building a great culture that people want to come to work, they enjoy the team. And I've had direct experience in my current organization with that. I'm currently undergoing some attrition problems and working with some teams to figure out pay, and it's not equitable, but I've been able to retain talent where other departments may be seeing talent leaving because I've built this great culture of people want to work on this team. Like we have other teams saying, man, we hear really good things about how you guys work together and how your team's working. And because it's true, because they love coming to work. They love being able to open and honest and talk across the team and have a say in where the direction of the team is going. Everybody has a say in our strategy. I get everybody together every year for a strategic offsite, and the groups go off and they kind of decide this is what we want to do and where we want to go. And then we share it and we discuss and we debate. Is this the right direction? Is this not the right direction? So everybody has a say in the direction of where we're going as a team. I think that's important for everybody, is to have that buy-in.
I get very directly retention from what you just said. How does team culture impact your ability to attract the right talent? Or does it have an
Uh,
impact on that?
That's a good question. I'd love to be able to quantify that. Quantification of culture. Wow. If you solve that for me, Steve, give me the formula so that I can directly tie and show causation from something. I can't say that I have a direct causation specific tie in or metric that I can tie that into, but I've had multiple people comment during the interview process that they wanted to join the team because of the people that they met during the interview process. Now, they could be blowing smoke. They could be like, oh, yay, I love joining this. I don't know. So to attract talent, I don't know if it's more art. It's probably more art than science at this point.
Just to give some color commentary to what you're saying there, other CHROs, people officers, chief technology officers have come on and said there is actually, I feel, very much a direct connection because in these days, we kind of have the mentality that when we're interviewing somebody, they should feel privileged to work here. But in reality, they're interviewing us as much as we're interviewing them.
Yeah. If I was the employee, I'd go, why do you want me to work for you? I don't come from that privileged perspective where I go, hey, why do you want to work for Freshworks? We're so cool. We're this. No, here's why I want you to work for me. Like, here's what I got to offer you as an employee. Here's what I can offer you. Please come on board. We want you here. To me, they're the ones that we're pursuing, not the other way around. So that's what attracts them to the position.
Yeah. Do you talk about your team and your company culture when you're interviewing people?
I talk about with the people that I talk about how I lead and the culture that I built. Absolutely.
So you're playing it all the way through, hey, team culture is the number one thing I look at to the point where you actually make it a part of your sales strategy, right? You're a salesperson trying to convince the best people to come here, and you're thinking, this is so important, right? That I want to make sure that you understand my philosophy in the team and like what you're thinking about. Instead of me putting words into your
It,
mouth, why do you bring it up on interview with somebody?
It's funny now you're mentioning this. It's not intentional. It just comes out as part of, hey, and here's what we're about. It isn't this intentional checklist, which could be a little Machiavellian to be like, okay, here's what I'm going to say to get them on board. And I say what I feel during the interview. I'd be honest, some interviews, maybe it hasn't come up, but definitely at the third or fourth engagement, as you get down, you all have an initial and then you go deeper in the subsequent interviews. During the deeper ones, that's when you find out cultural fit. So you start talking about, what's your leadership style? What are some of your influences that you've had in your life? Tell me about a great leader. Tell me about a bad leader you had and what that experience was like. And then that's typically when those conversations come out. And then especially when they ask me of like, what's the culture like or what's the team like? And that's where I'll go into it about what I'm trying to build here and what I'm looking for.
We've covered a lot of territory. What haven't we covered in terms of team culture and the importance for not only the individuals on your team, you, but the company? Like, what have we left on the table we haven't discussed yet?
I feel like we covered a lot. I would like to highlight that we talked about a little bit, like why sometimes people will join a company for the culture. But at the individual level, like I'm a CISO. It's not even a real C. It's like a mini C. So we're not like a CTO or a CEO that can have a lot more influence on driving company culture. In fact, it starts at the top. So I'd say the CEO is ultimately responsible for what the culture of the company is, or at least driving a top-down approach to meet the bottom up. Because I think culture comes from both directions and they both need to be in alignment and at least going towards the same way to get a sense of culture. So CEO, all the influence in the world. This guy, almost zero influence. But what you do have influence over is your team, and you own the culture of your team. So start there. So don't expect the company. That's why I think you and I chatted a little bit, and I was like, don't rely on HR. Don't go, HR, what do I do for my company culture? Be the CEO of your department. Determine what you want the culture to be and work with your team to build that culture, and don't let anybody tell you different. And just go, look, this is what I'm building on my team. This is how I function within my team. And this is what I want to build, a great, high-functioning, 5 dysfunctions-based team, and I'm going to go build that and just do it. And don't think that you don't have the ability or you have to follow what HR tells you for our company culture.
But if you look over your career and you think about, what am I most proud of? What have I been able to accomplish? Right? What are you the most proud of?
I'm honestly most proud of when people leave me and go on to better roles. It's like your kid going off to college. It's like somebody comes in and they were deputy CISO and they just went and got a CISO position. I mean, my hand hurts from high-fiving them so much. That's pride. I take pride in that. So this idea that you want to retain, sometimes I've seen leaders, oh, I'm worried about training or giving them all this stuff because they'll just go somewhere else. Great. Fantastic. And that's what builds that trust with that team member, knowing that at the end of the day, I don't give a shit about the company. I care about you. But if you think about it, they are the company. So I do care about the company. But I care it on an individual level. Like, I don't care about the stock price. I don't care about this. Are you happy? What can I give you? How can I get the best out of you and let you be the best that you can? Let's figure that out. People going on and being them best selves, or me being able to contribute to their career, that's what I'm proud of.
All right, so I've got only one more question for you. And this is probably the most important question overall, because there's a whole audience here that's watching. And our poor brains, we can't remember more than about 2 or 3 things at a time.
True. I already forgot what we talked about. I'm kidding.
So if there was one most important takeaway that you wanted people that are consuming this podcast to take away from our conversation today, what would that one thing be?
Yeah, I'm going to go to what I opened with about how I define my team's culture. How your team makes decisions is more important than the decisions themselves. Think about that. Think about, how am I coming to this decision as a group? Am I involving the group? Am I getting buy-in? Do I have the trust among the group? Do I have the right amount of conflict with the group to make those decisions? That will all lead into not only good decision making, but into a very high functioning team.
Here's what I do know. There's going to be a lot of questions. Is it okay if we give out a link to your LinkedIn profile?
Yeah, absolutely. Jason Loomis. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not hiding. Absolutely. I'd love to share a bunch of stuff to read and where I kind of got all this stuff from. And I'm an open book.
And you mentioned that book. I wanted to bring that up again. You said it was a quick read, a story kind of a format. What was that book again?
Yeah. It's called 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Amazing read. It's literally every other leadership framework that you're ever going to read about is based on these core concepts. And it's a simple, easy to understand, and easy to apply.
Fantastic. Jason, thank you so much. What a refreshing conversation. And one of the things that you demonstrated on this podcast, by the way, because you talked about humility and being humble as a leader, And then you said, I'm a CISO, but I'm about that. There's others. You put yourself into this position, right?
It's lowercase c.
I just wanted to call that out because I felt what it would be like to work with you on a team. You put yourself as an equal, right? And one of my big takeaways is if we all feel like we're equal contributors and collaborators on a team, then I think that team dynamic has a chance to succeed like it never had before.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for everything today. I would love to have you back on in the future, but this was fantastic. Thank you so
This
much.
was great. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks for having me.